Hello and welcome to Nigeria, the road to 2019, a series of programs where Arise News places the audience and the choice at the heart of our coverage of the upcoming presidential elections. I'm Charles Onyia. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, all the news, comment and analysis that provide unrivaled insight into Nigeria 2019, including with the presidential candidates taking part in a debate at the weekend, the campaigns for February's general election have now entered a critical stage. 5 candidates participated, but the focus has been on the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, of the ruling All Progressives Congress, or APC, and Peter Obi from the main opposition People's Democratic Party, or PDP. We'll have assessment of and reaction to the performance of the 2 formidable opponents. Now, it's being called the warm-up act for the big contest between the 2 main presidential candidates in mid-January. 2 of Nigeria's vice presidential candidates, Yemi Osinbajo and Peter Obi, taking part in a debate at the weekend. The 2, of course, are formidable opponents with credentials to match. Both have been in government at different levels. Mr. Osinbajo, a law professor, was a former commissioner for justice in southwest Lagos State before becoming vice president in 2015. Mr. Obi, an economist and successful businessman turned politician, governed southeast Anambra State for 8 years, both battling to tell Nigerians how they would help their principles address the catalogue of problems facing the country. During the debate, they were asked what they would do to strengthen Nigeria's economy. Incumbent Vice President Yemi Osinbajo cited corruption as a major stumbling block to growth.
Our country, over the past 16 years, has suffered a major infrastructure deficit. So we don't have rail, we don't have roads, power. You know, when we came into office in 2015, power was at 4,000 megahertz. That is 16 years, in 16 years. So you need strong infrastructure. And nobody can make excuses about that. You've got to have strong infrastructure, which is one of the major focuses of our administration's policy, in putting in place the right infrastructure. The second thing is that you cannot have a thriving economy if you allow the type of grand corruption that has taken place in Nigeria in the past 16 years.
Yemi Osinbajo, but the challenger and vice presidential candidate for the opposition PDP, Peter Obi, rubbished the idea that corruption was the main issue.
Fighting corruption is not an economic policy. It is not that you can't fight corruption, but you can fight it more aggressively while addressing economic issues. For example, in 2015, unemployment and underemployment was 24%. Today it's 40%. In 2015, we attracted $21 billion in foreign direct investment. We attracted only 17 last year. We attracted only 12 last year. That means it's going to, our GDP was 520 in 2015. Our per capita was 2,500. Today it's under 1,900. If you look at our stock market, it's lost over 2 trillion in 1 year. So that is not any policy. You're not creating jobs, you're not doing the right thing, and you're just fighting corruption. You can't shut down your shop and be chasing criminals.
Peter Obi there, and before him we heard from Yemi Osinbajo. Well, in a moment we'll have reaction to that debate from the 2 sides of the political divide. First, though, what are the issues that really concern Nigerians heading into the 2019 elections? Our correspondent Nisi Gabriel went out on the streets of Abuja to find out.
Just a few months to go now before Nigeria go to the polls to elect their new leaders. And it all seems to be shaping up to be an issue-driven campaign. So what are the issues that concerns Nigeria the most? Well, I will be talking to people on the streets of Abuja to find out.
People should talk about issues that will affect our lives positively. Look at the graduates that are moving on the streets, roaming about with their files, no job, there's no food for people to eat. Like people that are the youth now, they cannot eat in 3 square meals in a day. There are no jobs. Even people who are competent to do work, there's no job for them to do. People who are not competent, you see them flying about, driving in exotic cars, working in the better places. They don't have anything upstairs. They don't have anything to offer. But people who have something to offer, who have positive mindset for this country, there's no job for them. So what are we talking about? Issues of politics should be something at the front burner.
Each party should come out and tell the world the points of their manifesto, in particular that is directed towards solving the problems of the sovereignty, in particular the youth problem, unemployment, job creation, and the strategy or stratagems which they are putting in place to solve these perennial problems that is pulling Nigeria down. The question of hunger and poverty, which is endemic. Nigeria is now put as the most poorest country in the world, having over 89 million people living below poverty line by UN standard. That is a big time bomb, and all political party leaders should come out and tell the world what they want to do. It's already in the Gazette, it's already in the report from the UN that we are the poorest country in the world. All political party leaders, especially candidates who want to climb into position of office, should tell the electorate, the public, what they want to do to solve this problem. Then job creation, then electricity is another big blow. Security issue, the Boko Haram stroke, what do you call it, armed robbery, then kidnapping, rape cases, all these things, they should come out boldly on how to tackle crime and security so that there will be safety of life and property.
So we're looking at those that can bring in fresh ideas, things that has to do with the future generation of this country, not just somebody coming and tell you, I'm going to change this, I'm going to do that. And for 4 years, it's getting worse. Let me use the word, it's getting worse, okay? But if we can bring somebody who maybe not with the so-called political experience, but that has a willing mind and has the people around him that can, help him coerce these innovation ideas and all of that, that can bring, the power of the youthful generation into play. I think that will go a long way to help the future of this country.
The issue that should dominate the campaign, I think it should be an issue-based campaign. What we will do for us, not what APC has done or this one has done wrong. What if you are coming on board? What are you going to do for the nation? This is my intention. This is my plan for you. As I'm coming, vote me. I'll do this. Vote me. I'll do that. But this, I don't think that is what they are saying.
This is a snapshot of what Nigerians believe are the issues that ought to dominate the campaigns and that most concern voters as the election draws near. It is not a scientific sample, but merely intended to give you an idea of the thinking on the streets. For our Rise News, this is Nisi Gabriel at large in Abuja. Returning you now to Charles in the studio.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Nisi. Now, let's look at all those issues now, as well as that vice presidential debate that took place at the weekend, in which 5 political parties fielded their candidates, but expectedly, the focus has been on the performance of Yemi Osinbajo of the ruling APC and Peter Obi from the main opposition PDP. Later in the program, we'll be hearing assessment from the APC of how that debate turned out from their perspective. First, though, with me in the studio is a senior member of the PDP and staunch supporter of Atiku Abubakar, Dubem Onyia, who was also a former Minister of State for Foreign Affairs under the PDP government of President Obasanjo. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So, at the risk of asking an obvious question and knowing that as a result of your political affiliation with the PDP, we're going to get an obvious answer, I'll ask you anyway. How do you rate the vice presidential debate that took place on Friday?
Well, you see, Charles, I'm not just going to give you an obvious answer, because the debate was transparent. Nigerians left whatever they were doing and watched the debate. It was astonishing to note that most Nigerians closed shop left offices, left whatever they're doing. Even the football fans had to go home to watch the debate. If you go through the social network, you see the comment of Nigerians.
Yes, I've seen quite a lot of
it. Was clear. And I sympathize with Vice President Osibanjo, a very fine gentleman, an intellectual, a good lawyer. But unfortunately, that was nothing to come to debate about. 3.5 years, 4 years, going to 4 years, the government of PDP, the present government, had nothing to show. They came into power on 3 agendas, which Nigeria, that was why Nigerians voted for them. One, they promised Nigeria they were going to provide security of life and property. They said they were going to fight corruption. They were going to grow the economy, provide economic development. They failed on the 2 grounds, on the 3 grounds. The 4th one, stabilize power supply. And you know it, Charles. You've been abroad, you lived outside this country. Stabilization of electricity in any country is sine qua non to economic development. Provision of security of life and property attracts investment, both internal and external. And then you talk about the fight against corruption. Tell me one person that has been arrested or charged or taken to court or arraigned before the court for corruption since the inception of this government. Even when the former Secretary of the Federal Government was caught with his hands, both hands in the pie. A committee set up by the government, chaired by Osibanjo himself, indicted him. He still was roaming out before. He was never charged, never taken to court.
I think...
so tell me, and I sympathize with him, he was properly thrashed.
Right, so the assumption is that in your estimation, it wasn't him that came out top dog.
It wasn't him at all.
So who did?
P2B did.
Right. And all these things that you've mentioned now, the fact that you've talked about the things that they came into power that they promised to do. The fact that the PDP was in power for 16 years, and the perception is that they failed to fix things like the same security, the same electricity. We're not talking about 3.5 years, 16 years that your party was in power. The economy, you failed to fix it. I mean, that's something that the APC is going to be banging on about and comparing it to their 3.5 years in office. How are you going to get away from that?
I'm surprised that you're saying that the PDP failed to fix...
Well, you didn't fix electricity. You didn't fix security. You didn't fix the economy.
Wait there. Do you remember that the Boko Haram did not start actually under PDP as such?
Nor did it start under the APC.
We had the problem of OD when Obasanjo was president. He took care of it immediately.
We're not talking about OD.
Wait.
We're talking about Boko Haram.
There was Zakibia. Boko Haram was under check. Who created Boko Haram?
No, but that's not.
No, who created Boko Haram?
That's not the issue.
No, who created
the issue is that your government is charged with security of this country.
Who created
and you failed to arrest the Boko Haram situation, which is why one of the main reasons your government was voted out of office and the APC brought in.
Absolutely. But first of all, before I say something about that, who brought about Boko Haram?
No, I don't think that's the issue.
Now, if the issue of who brought Boko Haram, the Boko Haram was used to sabotage PDP government. But be it as it may, now it was because of Boko Haram that you now voted in the present government. Right. Have they been able to checkmate Boko Haram? Have they raised the issue of Boko Haram? Have they restored security to the country? If we couldn't fix it, if PDP government couldn't fix it, and Nigeria said, you can't fix Boko Haram, we want you out of government, we're going to bring the government that's going to fix it. Have they been able to do it?
Yeah, but if they can't fix it and you can't fix it, then perhaps both of you don't need to be in office.
But listen to me.
Yeah.
Majority of the people that formed this government left PDP to ABC. And the present government had the opportunity, had the wherewithal. They promised Nigeria they would fix it. It wasn't that we couldn't fix it. It was used to sabotage the government. Therefore, they created Boko Haram to sabotage PDP government.
I like that.
They did. And you know it. They created Boko
I
Haram.
don't, actually.
But I'm telling you,
Right.
they created Boko Haram to sabotage PDP government. At the time when the election was about 1 year, less than a year to the election. And it's easy to create a monster. But you cannot control that monster. They created that monster.
I think...
But they could not control it.
I will simply respond a little bit to that and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
Because the facts are that the perception that was being given by the government of Goodluck Jonathan was that this Boko Haram was a contrived situation. That was what made their reaction, including the kidnap of the Chibok girls. He didn't actually believe that the Chibok girls...
by the members of this present government.
He did not believe that the Chibok girls were actually kidnapped. I traveled with a crew from Arise News to Chibok. We broke that news internationally, Arise News. Yeah. We went there, we interviewed the people, we saw what was going on there, and we broke the news to the world. President Jonathan did not react to it or respond to it for a very long time, which was what allowed almost the kidnap to consolidate itself. But let's move on from there.
No, but Charles, no, I won't let you move on from that. I won't let you move on from that.
Okay.
Now, at that particular point in time, it was because of that very particular Chibok girls. Remember what happened, what got rid of President Carter when the Americans were kidnapped in the embassy. And he couldn't release them before the election. That was why he couldn't go for the second term. This Boko Haram thing was contrived by the members of this government towards the dying end of that, towards the election period. And that was when the Chibok girls were
I'm afraid.
And because of that, the Nigerians said, well, you could fix it. You can't provide that security.
Right.
You can't secure us. Even when President Jonathan was doing his best.
Well, I'm afraid I don't have any evidence to support your allegations.
Well, you don't have...
On the other hand, just watching that debate that took place a few days ago, Mr. Osinbajo scored high points with many people by pointing to actual achievements of his administration, whereas Mr. Obi focused more on criticizing.
What were the achievements? Can you tell us what the achievements were?
Well, there are innumerable achievements. They've done a number of things on poverty alleviation. They have limited
40% of unemployed.
They have limited the scope of operation of Boko Haram. Okay,
we are not talking about. How about what are you talking about? Limiting their scope or getting rid of Boko Haram?
No. I am saying.
Are you talking about getting rid?
I am saying that when
it is the duty of government to provide security of life and property, both internally and externally.
Yeah, but that's the
same.
You can't tell me that. Saying that
you can't tell me, Charles. You can't tell me, Charles, that I have prevented criminals from entering your house in your corridor, but your main living room is not safe. They can't get. They're in the corridor. And I wouldn't allow them to get to the main room. You tell me that the environment is safe, totally safe.
Minister, if I might remind you, okay, a few years ago, Abuja was under threat. This Day is our affiliate, This Day newspaper. Their offices were bombed in Abuja.
Absolutely.
The United Nations office was bombed in Abuja.
Yes.
Okay, there were threats, even as far as Enugu, Lagos, all that sort of thing. That is no longer prevalent today. They have been limited to northeast Nigeria.
It wasn't this very particular government that stopped them from being prevalent. It was the PDP government.
Right.
By the time this government came into power, Abuja had been secured. Well secured.
Right. Okay. Well, let's move on and talk about another bit. That bit about corruption, where Peter Obi talked about it being senseless to abandon a shop in pursuit of criminals. Mr. Osinbajo was quick to counter by saying that there would be no shop at all if the criminals steal everything, implying, of course, that they did under the PDP. So to his credit, Mr. Osinbajo was pretty quick on the uptake and came across as well-spoken and quite suave in that direction.
Absolutely wrong. Because first of all, it's the duty of the shopkeeper to keep the shop open and continue to market his products and generate revenue, and the duty of the security men to chase the criminals.
Not if...
The
shop owner would be stupid to keep their shop open if it's being robbed every night. I'd lock my shop up and go home until you fix security.
Well, why would you lock your shop if the security agencies are doing their work properly?
No.
But you know it very well that the government has no problem, no duty interfering with the issue of corruption. Look, this government came into power promising Nigerians that there will be changes in terms of economic development. If you have your shop open and you call the police will chase the criminal while your shop will be open and you'll be selling and generating revenue for yourself. Look, if you lock your shop and you don't sell your shop, you die of hunger.
No. What I'm saying,
you will not make revenue.
What I'm saying is,
by the time you come back, it is safe for you to open your shop. Your goods will have been elapsed. You will not make enough money to look after yourself and your family and to continue your business.
The fact is that Mr. Osibanjo really hit the PDP
No.
What is the point on that corruption issue?
What is the duty of the security agents? Once you get criminally coming to attack your shop, you call the police.
You know, we're not talking about attacking the shop. We are talking about the security agencies, and that's the equivalent of what the government is doing. The security agency is saying, listen, there's been so much robbery. It's a bit like the theater of war in the Northeast. You don't tell people to move back into the Northeast when you've got, attacks, counter attacks going on. You tell them to leave until you've secured the area. What the government is trying to do is to secure that shop, which they claim has been robbed blind by PDP.
You cannot secure the shop by asking the market. If you go to Wiksa market, you tell the market to shut down because you're pursuing 1 or 2 criminals. For how long?
It's not 1 or 2 criminals. It's an endemic problem in Nigeria.
1 or 2 criminals.
Well,
now tell me how many people this government have arrested since they came into power in terms of corruption. Name one. I'll give you an example. Example of the former secretary of the federal government. Why is he still going about? Has he been arraigned before the court?
Part of the problem
about the pension issue. By now, has he been brought to book?
Part of the problem.
Tell me one person since 3.5 years, going to 4 years, one person arraigned before the court by this government on the issue of corruption.
Well, we've had 2 governors.
That was during the last government.
Who have been sent to jail.
That was a case that's been going on through the PDP government.
The fact is simply this.
It was a case that's been going on through the PDP government. Those cases of Darie and
yeah, but that tells you
no, it wasn't this government.
It tells you how slowly.
Tell me for 3.5 years, going to 4 years.
Yeah, but it tells you
one person.
It tells you how slowly the wheels of government, the wheels of justice operate in this country. If you do things democratically,
but that is the change.
It takes forever.
But the government promised Nigeria change. Is that the change that they promised to give Nigerians?
Look, the fact is,
if the previous government had been slow with their will of governance, and the government came and said, look, please, we are not happy with the present government. We were going to come and change things. We're going to make it faster. Now tell me, have they changed anything?
Well, let's move on from there.
Have they changed anything?
Because what I want to ask you is this. When you were in power, the incoming government accused you of lots of corruption. You couldn't manage or contain the Boko Haram insurgency. What I need to know now is, what are you going to do differently this time? Have you learned much from your 3.5 years in opposition?
First of all, let me tell you something, Charles. Most of the people who left PDP to go to APC were those who are corrupt. Everybody that left PDP to go to APC were corrupt members of...
No, you're asking the Nigerian people to vote for you, to vote you back.
Well, I'm just telling you something.
We need to know what lessons have you learned from the mistakes you made in the past.
We learned our lesson. First of all, we came out, we apologized to Nigerians. We learned our lessons, 16 years. We learned our lessons. But let me tell you something. Within that 16 years, Peter Obi was able to tell Nigerians what PDP did in the past 16 years. If you don't know anything, let me even use one as an example. This GSM was introduced by the PDP government, by Obasanjo government between 1998, 1999 to 2003.
Yeah, that's what you did then.
No, I'm telling you.
What we're talking about is what are you going to do now?
Even the railways that the present government went and commissioned was the brainchild of the PDP government.
In fairness to you, I agree, because I saw that.
What I asked you, tell me one project that the present government has done in the past 3.5 years.
What I want to do,
you are a journalist.
Minister Dubem Onyia, is to move on from accusations. Should your party, the PDP, win the presidency, what will be your main priorities? Or let me put it this way.
Okay, let me tell you.
What is the first thing that you would recommend to your party to do to make the lives of Nigerians better?
First of all, there's going to be what we call energizing. The government will bring up policies that will energize the private sector, so that entrepreneurs, both Nigerians and foreigners, will come to Nigeria and invest. Number one, you see, governments have no business creating jobs. It is the private sector that energizes the sector.
But that is what all the presidential candidates and their parties
No,
are saying.
but
I
listen to
mean,
me.
how are you going to do it? What will your action plan
Because
be?
Atiku Abubakar and P2B have done it on their own private life. They are successful businessmen. They are entrepreneurs. They are the greatest employers in this country. They will replicate it when they get the power. They will. It is not what I will do, because politicians will promise to build bridge, to put water under a bridge where there is no bridge. But first of all, Charles, I will take what you've done before to judge what you'll do tomorrow. Atiku Abubakar is an entrepreneur. He's an educationist. He's done it. He's one of the greatest employers. P2B is an entrepreneur. He's an economist. He's done it. His business is thriving. They replicate it. Provide jobs for the younger ones. We produce youth corpers every day. They come into from being hopeful to hopelessness. You are a youth today. In the next 10, 20 years, you become an adult, no job. Unless there are 3 sources of employment when you leave school. You either become an armed robber, a kidnapper, or a drug pusher. Because the government has, it is the duty of the government, it is the duty of the citizens to pay tax, and the duty of the government to provide employment. How do they provide employment? They provide employment by creating the enabling environment for the private sector to grow. Those who have done it before in their practical life, give them the opportunity to do it again. Let me tell you something. Atiku Abubakar was the one who brought in the experts, professionals, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Soludo and others. They produced the blueprint that drove the economic project of the Obasanjo second term. And he put them into the cabinet to implement what they've written. So they know how to do it. They work with professionals. But this government is run by cabals. Does not care about Nigerian life. Zero report on security, 0 report on creation of jobs, 0 report on economic development, 0 report on inflation.
Let me ask you this. That way. If the PDP loses this election, will they accept the result?
PDP will not lose this election.
Can I just ask
let
me ask the question. If they lose this election, will they accept the result, or will they claim that they've been rigged out of?
First of all,
winning?
Remember that the PDP government accepted the last election result that has never been done in this country and handed over to the present government. They had the opportunity then to say we will not accept the result. The PDP government, the PDP as a political party is a disciplined party. Very disciplined party based on the people. That's why their slogan is power belongs to the people. And I don't even want to think about it because Nigerians are fed up. The youths have no hope in this country. We need to bring the real change and get the people who know how to do the job to do it.
Okay, we're almost out of time. I mentioned that you were Minister of State for Foreign Affairs under President Obasanjo. When you look back at that time, what reflections come to mind?
You know, Charles, sometimes I don't even want to think about it. Because during our own period, Nigerian came first. Nigerian came first. Everything we did on behalf of the citizens of this country. It was during our time that we brought the ECOWAS Parliament to Nigeria. It was during our time that we made sure that Nigerians who are stranded in Libya, who have been abused in Libya, were brought home.
Well, they've done the same thing this government has.
Well, they took it after our Nigerians were never, our passport meant something to Nigerians then. Because remember, we came from a pariah state to a democratic setup and we had to defend our passports. Our passport meant something. You could not have gone to any foreign embassy in Nigeria during that period and get your visa denied without any reason. But today, nobody has any respect for Nigerian passports. And you know what I'm talking about. So, ministers get their visa denied. Nigerians top civil servants go to the embassies and they were looked down upon. It was never like that during our own time. You have the right to deny Nigerian visa, but you have to do it with reasons, or else we will retaliate.
Right. Well, we're virtually out of time. Just before you go, what is your final message to the Nigerian people as someone who is a staunch supporter of Atiku Abubakar, someone who has been a part of the PDP and would like to see the PDP come back into.
My message to them is that when you marry two wives, you know which one is better. The PDP made a mistake in the past time. We apologized. And we wanted to give Nigerians the opportunity. Nigerians decided to choose another government. We gave the opportunity to taste. But now, in the last 3.5 years, going to 4 years, that was nothing to show for it. The employment has gone from 20% to 40%. The naira was 187 naira to $1 at the time we left office. Today is 360. It went to 500, 600, and came back and pegged at 360. There is no hope for the youth in this country. So my advice is now vote for the real change. Vote for Atiku Abubakar and P2P ticket. Those who know how to do the job, entrepreneurs in their own right, businessmen in their own right, they will fix the economy as they did before.
Okay, Dubem Onyia, former Minister of State for Foreign Affairs and a senior member of the PDP, as well as a staunch supporter of Atiku Abubakar. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're watching Nigeria, the road to 2019. Plenty more still ahead, including we'll cross over to the other side of the political divide to get the perspective of a member of the ruling APC party on the just concluded vice presidential debate, as well as on other issues trailing the upcoming general election. Stay with us. Welcome back to Nigeria, the road to 2019. I'm Charles Aniegolu. Now, as you may know, 5 of Nigeria's vice presidential candidates have faced off in a scheduled vice presidential debate as the country prepares to vote for a new leader 2 months from now. Assessments are still ongoing as to who won that debate, but analysts say the 2 main candidates, Yemi Osinbajo of the ruling APC and Peter Obi of the main opposition PDP, scored high political points as they bucked heads on issues such as corruption, the economy and foreign policy. Well, for reaction to that debate from the point of view of the ruling All Progressives Congress, I'm joined now in the studio by the APC chieftain, Alhaji Dauda Sarakin Gabas, who was a former Minister of Education under the military leader, Sani Abacha. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. We appreciate that. There you are. That's you on this page. What's your assessment of that vice presidential debate? Did your candidate, Yemi Osinbajo, live up to your expectations, or was he outclassed by his chief opponent, Peter Obi?
The issue of anybody outclassing Osinbajo is totally ruled out. We are lucky we have a vice president we can be proud of. He's an academic, a very high-flying lawyer, a preacher, and a Christian. When I use the word Christian, I use it deliberately. I am a Muslim. But I want a Christian to be a disciple of Christ. And therefore, when you find somebody like Osinbajo, who is a vice president, an orator, an intellectual, it is very difficult to say that somebody has come and outclassed him. No matter how charitable you want to be to the other person, you will find lumps in your throat when you make that statement.
Well, it's not me saying it.
Oh, no, I'm saying...
If you go through social media...
I've gone through social media.
You'll find that people have scored Peter Obi much higher than they scored Vice President Osinbajo.
Well, we are on several divides. People are either on the regional divide, the religious divide, the social divide, the political divide,
or the ethnic divide.
In fact, more than anything else. And therefore, when somebody from their ethnic group comes, there is no question they would say he scored. Because one, when he speaks, the intonation, the way he speaks and things like that is more in tune with his own, and therefore he says he won. Neither Peter Obi nor Yemi Osinbajo comes from the ethnic bloc I come from. And therefore, I am capable of giving a dispassionate assessment, both in their delivery, in the intellectual content of what they are saying. And Osinbajo has the burden of incumbency. But look at the way he handled himself.
Never mind the fact that you're a member of Osinbajo's
of course,
party.
I'm a member of his party, but I'm not an official of the party. Your being a member of the party does not becloud your judgment. As a person who has been in politics for so many years, and as somebody who has the burden of my age and years, I should comment on what has happened, taking into account the history of credibility through which I have come. And therefore, I would want to be consistent in my credibility and would not turn facts upside down just because a much younger person has performed and I give him superlative marks just because I come from his party. That would be very unlike somebody of my age and my experience. So I was minister 20 years ago.
Right. Yes, I know. You were Minister of Education.
Yes.
So you want us to believe that there is no prejudice or bias on your part in favor of the APC, because that's your political party.
Well, let me say so.
Right.
A human being is reasonably prejudiced depending on where he comes from. I will not rule out prejudice totally. And when Osibanjo came on screen, I was optimistic. He did not let me down.
Right. Somebody said on Twitter that Peter Obi and Yemi Osinbajo, given that you're being objective, let's get your take on this, that Peter Obi and Yemi Osinbajo should switch with their principles and be the presidential candidates, while Atiku and Buhari should be their vice presidential running mates. What do you think about that?
Well, somebody has said so, but let me say from the outset, President Buhari is my friend and he had been my friend. We set for our West African school certificate on the same day. Him in Katsina and I set for mine in Maiduguri. We finished the provincial secondary schools at that time, and for quite some time we had been friends. He is 76, I am 78. We are closer to each other's age than, you know, I would much rather see him go through and finish, and as soon as he finishes, I would vote for Osibanjo to take over from him, a much younger person, a brilliant fellow, and he is coming from the south, while we have this understanding that there is going to be a north-south rotation. And if his pupillage, which is brilliant, continues, and he acquires more knowledge, I would not steamroll him into saying, let him immediately take over. He has another 4 years of pupillage, and when Osibanjo becomes president in 2023, he will be a brilliant person. He may be a little bit tired at that time because of the rigors of what he has gone through in 8 years, but I think we shall have a fantastic president, and the work in progress, which is Nigeria, will be a successful work in progress.
You don't think Peter Obi would fill those shoes?
Peter Obi is a vice presidential candidate in a PDP, which is not going to win, and therefore, how is he going to fill that space? How is he going to fill that space?
That's a good one.
You know, I have several Igbo friends who come from Anambra, and in fact, when I talk of Anambra amongst my social circle, they say, if I were Igbo, I would have been from Anambra, and therefore, jokingly, amongst my Igbo friends, I say I'm from Anambra unless they let me down and I switch over to Imo or some such place. So Peter Obi unquestionably has done well, but well is not enough if you are juxtaposed against somebody who is doing better. And no matter how uncharitable you want to be to Osibanjo, he scored A. Anybody who scores B+ is coming behind him. So there is no question.
Just getting back to that debate, the problem that a lot of people seem to notice about Yemi Osinbajo was that he did not seem to provide enough factual information to support some of the things that he said. I mean, you have to give it to Peter Obi, though, haven't you? I mean, his command of the figures and his ease of delivery came across as most impressive, and that's what I'm seeing a lot of on social media, and people from different ethnic groups, not Igbos, I mean, people from all over the country.
Let me say something. Incumbency is an encumbrance. If you are an incumbent, there are certain things you can do, there are certain things you cannot do.
Well, you can provide people with, you can provide the people.
But let us look at the critic.
You actually have an advantage, because what happens, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you have an advantage because you're actually doing something. I mean, and what people want to see is the clarity of your vision and to what extent you've gone to implementing that vision. he didn't seem to be able to put that across.
Let me tell you something. If you are an incumbent, that's why I'm talking about incumbency and its encumbrances. You are there, you say something, there are certain things which are work in progress. You are not, if you say you will be specific on them, you will have certain problems. But the outsider who wants to come in is like the thief who wants to break into your house, and therefore the gloves are off. He will bite, he will scratch, he will punch to make sure that he gets in. But the incumbent has encumbrances, and therefore I do not blame Osibanjo for not reeling out figures and things like that. But I believe you will come to a stage in which the presidents will be juxtaposed against. Mark you, I sometimes criticize the issue of vice presidential campaigns, because if you say that the tire which is in the boot, which will be used if there is a puncture, is the tire that's going to speak to you, now you have got a problem. If you want to speak to the tire which is on the ground, because it is what is moving you from one point to another.
Yeah, but the focus of that debate was a lot on the economy, and the vice presidents are the ones who are in charge of the economy.
They are in charge of the economy, but they are number two. There are times when somebody comes to your house, he states an issue, your wife knows a lot better than you do, but she keeps quiet. You are the master, you are the person who presents the facts and things like that. Maybe when the arguments are over and the facts are over, she will say, look, you should have said this and this and this and things like that, because she is the person in the kitchen, the person in the sitting room, the person in the bathroom, and the person who makes sure that the house is tidied and things like that. Therefore, the number two has certain problems. I still maintain a number two has encumbrance, but a person who is waiting to assail this title and to come into it can say all manners of things. Of course, when you are there, if there is something wrong, somebody is there writing up what is going wrong and things like that. He would have statistics of what has gone wrong and all the beautiful scenarios he creates about when he comes, what he is going to do. When he comes in, he will be hamstrung by the realities on the ground.
Right, but do you concede, though, that Mr. Obi methodically outlined the problems, posited solutions for them, giving facts and figures to back up his position?
Let me say this and repeat.
Was not able to do it.
No, I don't concede that. Let me say, Peter Obi spoke very well. I wish his voice was a little bit louder and a little bit more
deep, like yours.
Well, it doesn't have to be deep
resonant,
my mind, but
more deeply resonant.
If you are staying, if you are listening to him behind a curtain, you should know that it's a man who is speaking. But this low tenor and things like that doesn't impress me. But I concede to him.
Funny.
He's a brilliant person who has brought it, and somebody who has been selected to be part of the team that is going to replace our team. He has done very well. But Osibanjo did better.
Right, okay, let's take a closer look at the figures, because Mr. Osibanjo gave some figures, and we've checked those figures, and they're apparent incorrections. One such statistic is that Nigeria is producing 90% of its rice consumption, which appears to be wrong, because the figures seem to suggest that Nigeria is producing about 4.8 to 5 million metric tons of rice, but is actually consuming around 7 to 8 million metric tons. And those are figures from the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, an agency that monitors food and hunger around the world.
These figures are blatantly wrong. The figures from the World Health Organization, because they were asked,
Food and Drug Administration.
World Food and Drug Administration. You know, they were asked where they got their figures. They said from postulations based on weather patterns, from flood that has come in, from rice fields that have not been harvested, and things like that. But when we talk of importation, you go to the bank and ask, what Form M has been opened? What has passed through the customs? And what has been cleared? From the time the rice issue became front burner, Nigeria has checked, and 90% of the rice that we used to import is now produced domestically. I must concede, smuggled rice comes across the border because there's a degree of elitism in our consumption in Nigeria. There are some people who say their rice must be rice brought in from, from Florida, rice brought in from Thailand and things like that. And no matter how you manage to bring this rice, that is the rice they want. But the average Nigerian who consumes homegrown rice does not talk about imported rice.
And would you say that more Nigerians consume homegrown?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
For instance, now, no matter how you believe I'm a member of the elite club,
which you clearly are.
I really wouldn't know, because I have tendencies. Because, in fact, at a time, I used to have my breakfast with Rice Krispies. But I told my people who buy, I say, you must buy NASCO cornflakes, because NASCO cornflakes come to the table as a result of Nigerian labor. And therefore, I try as much as possible to avoid anything except it is forced on me. And therefore, I believe we are producing. I come from Adamawa State, mark you, and a lot of rice people claim is produced in their state is in actual fact produced in Adamawa, because if you go to the market in Ganye, in Jada, in Mubi, in Gombe and things like that, on a market day, you find 50, 70 trucks waiting to take paddy rice from these markets to the south. We don't mind. The south is still part of Nigeria. We are agricultural, they are not. Maybe they have the value-added possibilities, and therefore they thrash the rice, they polish it and things like that, and they call it Abakaliki rice or some other rice. We don't mind. It is our labor that has produced the basic rice there, and therefore I know what we produce. In fact, I keep urging authorities that, having succeeded in this rice project, they should now switch on to wheat. But they say that wheat is a political thing, because America will start blowing the whistle on us, because they say if they import this from us and import that from us, why is it that we are impeding the importation of wheat? And therefore, they force us not to produce. But if we are free, there are no shackles and there are no obstacles on us, then we should switch over to wheat. And if we produce rice as we are producing, and we produce wheat as we are producing, then our bread will make out of wheat. People will be sort of combining this grain and that grain, and then we move to another one, because these things are step by step. You succeed in one, move to the other one. When you succeed in the other, for instance now, in tomatoes now, except for the blight that takes place from time to time, we are self-sufficient in tomatoes. You don't have to import paste and things like that. But the blight sometimes, and then we are conquering it. Look at the onion situation. But for the Boko Haram insurgency in the onion producing area, we'll be exporting onion to all manners of places on the face of this.
Right.
Therefore, our production possibilities are now going up, and figures...
And that is as a result of this government.
Oh, it is as a result of this
well, let
government.
me ask you this. Let me ask you this, because if you dispute those figures from the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, and you're agreeing with the Vice President that Nigeria is producing 90% of its rice consumption,
yes,
doesn't it appear ridiculous and perverse that if Nigeria is producing so much rice locally, that the price should be going up instead of down? 3 years ago, a 50 kg bag of rice, this is something that we have verified, was 10,000 naira. Today it is 25,000 naira. Why is that? Now
let me tell you, as a result of the gradual devaluation of our naira, at one time it was 106, 130 and things like that. Now it's 300. Our neighbors are waiting at the border for our rice to come across, because we have now made our neighbors lazy. They are waiting for Nigerian rice to eat, and the competition for Nigerian rice is very intense. So you have this paradoxical situation.
Well, it is a paradox, and I'm hoping you will unravel that paradox for us, because you're speaking quite eloquently about the things, the fact that the government, I mean, it just doesn't make economic sense, does it? That you're producing 90% of your own rice, and the rice is more expensive, and you're responsible for the devaluation of the naira.
Fine.
I mean,
that's a different angle, because if you say the economy is based on supply and demand, and there was shortage of foreign exchange, and therefore the naira value went down, and and things like that, that's a different kettle of fish. But what I'm saying is that We are producing a large amount of rice, but people are waiting at the border and taking this rice away, and we have made them lazy. We have exported unemployment to them, and the Nigerian farmer is now employed. Let me tell you something. We in the north measure the index of prosperity between farmers and other, by the number of people who want to go to Mecca on the Hajj and things like that. Comfortably, 70% of the people who go to Mecca now annually are farmers. That is because there is more money in the, and we're happy with that, because if we say go to the farm, go back to the farm, the farmer has gone back to the farm and he is now more prosperous than he has. We do not bother. Everybody has land that he can cultivate. There are people who believe they are elites, they are educated, they want white-collar jobs, they do not want to go and farm. Woe betide these people, because they should go to the farm and produce.
The problem, Minister, is that the man on the street, the woman on the street, it makes no difference to them what you're explaining. What they know is that 3 years ago, they could go to the market with 10,000 naira and buy a bag of rice. Today, they need 25,000 naira to buy that. And they hold your government responsible.
As a matter of fact, I do not...
telling them that you're producing 90% makes no difference.
In fact, this question of 25,000 doesn't stand, because much as I produce rice on my farm, I do not consume it and I do not sell it. In the environment, I use it for family charity. And my wives, from time to time, go to the market. Today, a bag of rice is between 16,000 and 18,000.
Well, it depends on where you go, doesn't
it? That's it. I bring
but
out
it's still
the money.
More expensive.
But I live in two places. One of my wives is in Yola, and she buys in Yola. The other one is in Abuja here.
Well, you're
and she
a lucky man.
Oh, of course, yes, I am lucky. So my religion permits me to have two. In fact, it says 4, but 4 will kill me.
But you thought you would settle for 2.
I settled for 2,
right.
Yes.
So what lessons, just returning to that debate, what lessons, if any, do you think should be learned from the way that debate was conducted in terms of the number of candidates who took part and the overall quality of the output?
Well, let me say something. I have never denigrated the performance of Peter Obi. He was a successful governor in Anambra State.
No, I'm talking about the quality, the overall quality of the production, if you like. There were 5 candidates. There've been arguments that there should have been more, that there should have been less. That perhaps it should have been just the 2 main candidates.
In fact, I saw 2 women participate.
Yeah,
I admired them. I don't know if I'm a retired womanizer or something like that, and therefore I admire them. But they did very well. Well,
that's not the rating. A lot of people thought they actually were a distraction and an irritation.
That's their point of view.
Right.
I grew up in a family in which my elder sisters were benevolent, they were kind, they even spoiled me. That I am what I am today is a measure of how much my elder sisters had looked after me. I remember one of my elder sisters studied in England for 7 years. Every single thing she read, as a newspaper, a magazine, and things like that, she parceled and sent to me. That improved my English, my delivery, my understanding, and everything. And it was a challenge. And therefore, when I see women perform, I am charitable towards them. Well, there are people who are not charitable to them and think women should not be on that podium at all. I'm not one of these people. Well, and therefore, I also factor them in.
I have to say that we appreciate the fact that your sister did what she did, because you are a very articulate gentleman. Thank you very much indeed. Alhaji Dauda Sarakin Gabas, who is an APC chieftain and was a former Minister of Education under the military leader Sani Abacha. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's it for this edition of Nigeria, The Road to 2019. Join us again for a fresh edition tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.